Hello and welcome to my October book unhaul. I was going to wait until November to do this because I have some books to unhaul from this month too, but I'm having a little bit of a space crisis in that I don't have space and these books were piling up on my floor and they need to go. So I'm filming this now so that I can just get rid of these books. This is also the second time I'm trying to film this video because my camera gave up in the middle of filming and then deleted the footage, so I'm not thrilled with the world right now, but that's fine. We're gonna get through this. I have 20 books to unhaul, technically 21, but one of them is the same title twice, so 20. This unhaul is also a little bit different than other unhauls because I do have a couple of books on here that I haven't read. Well, actually more than a couple, 5, 6, 8, a lot. I have books on here I haven't read because I don't like doing that usually, because sometimes it's books will surprise me. There's a reason I picked up the book, so I do always feel like I want to give it a chance because I had a reason for picking it up. Even if I've heard bad things or changed my mind or whatever, I still want to try it. But there were just a couple here on my shelves. I was I'm never gonna read these. I don't want to read them. There's no reason to keep them on my shelves, so they're going away. So I'm just gonna get into this because I do have 20 books to talk about, and yeah, I'm gonna start with these two because they're closest. America Anonymous, 8 Addicts in Search of a Life by Benoit Denizet. I read this the other month, August, September, something like that, and I think I gave it 3 stars. This is a nonfiction book about addiction, and essentially it's supposed to be him covering the lives of I think 8 or 9 addicts, and it's a book of journalism essentially is what it's supposed to be. And he follows these people and their lives, these addicts who have different addictions, and them getting treatment, them relapsing, etc., etc. And I was really intrigued by that. But the problem with this book was that it's not so much him following the addicts as it is him having a brief check-in with each of the addicts every 6 to 8 months, which is not thrilling. I don't know, there's not much there, there wasn't really much with the addicts, which was what I was interested in. I was interested in the character studies of these people, and you got basically nothing from that. And he brought in a lot of vague information from addiction experts and stuff like that. He talked about his own experiences, and it just wound up being a lot of different things combined, but none of them I found particularly worthwhile. It was fine, it wasn't bad, it was just one of those books that I'm I'm never gonna think about this again. And it was kind of a letdown based on what I expected. Not terrible, but just I don't need this. Maybe someone else will get something out of it. I don't know. And then I have A House in the Sky by Amanda Lindhout and Sara Corbett. Amanda Lindhout was, or is, I guess, she was a journalist. Kind of a TV journalist. She went to places and recorded footage and sold it and started freelancing, she wasn't with a big network or anything. And she wound up going to Somalia. I read this book 3 years ago, so that's why I don't know what I'm talking about, just for the record. She wound up going to Somalia, where she got kidnapped with another guy and held for over a year. And this is just about her experience being held in captivity. I think I gave this 3 stars, but I don't remember it very well. So I don't remember enjoying it that much. I remember having some issues with the way she was telling her story and not so much the truth of it. It wasn't, I always struggle talking about memoirs because I don't want to call people liars because that's not how I'm feeling. It's more that the way it was being told, I didn't feel I was getting the whole of the story, or maybe it was sensationalized, or maybe, I don't know, again, I read this 3 years ago, so I don't really remember, but I do remember feeling there was something off about it. And I don't know what that was, and I don't know if I knew what it was at the time, to be honest. And I do remember enjoying it enough. I gave it 3 stars. I think it was fine. I kept it on my shelf, and it has a really pretty cover. But I don't know, there was just something about it that like kind of hit me the wrong way, and I don't think I loved her as a character. I mean, she's a real person, but like within the context of the book, she is a character, and I didn't really love reading about her, and like, I don't know, there was kind of a lot going on there. I was kind of looking at it like, I read this 3 years ago and I've not thought about it since, and I don't have like very fond feelings toward it, like inherent, like, you know, when you look at a book that you've read like years ago on your shelf and you're like, I don't really remember that, but I do feel an attachment towards it. I just didn't for this, and I feel like I kind of don't need to keep it. The first of the books that I am unhauling without reading is Feminism Without Illusions, a critique of individualism by Elizabeth Fox-Genovese. She passed away a while ago. This is a nonfiction book about feminism that I picked up like ages and ages ago at a book fair that I like going to, and it's just like, I kind of picked it up randomly because I was like, oh, like an interesting book on feminism, and then like as I was hearing more, I was like, oh, she's a very conservative feminist, which I am not. I'm much more liberal, and I was gonna read it anyway because it was like it's interesting to get a different perspective, and like it, just because I disagree with her about most things, like I'd still probably agree with her about some things, and like probably learn things from it. And so I did keep it and plan on reading it, but like it has been like probably 8 years since I bought this book, and just the longer I go, the more I'm like not interested in reading it. And like I used to read a lot of heavier nonfiction when I was younger, and I just don't read as much of it anymore, so I don't want to like waste kind of a thick, dense book on like a subject and a topic I'm really not going to agree with at all. And like, I don't know, I don't have any interest in this, and I don't know, I just like, I can't say anything negative about the book because I obviously haven't read it, but it's just one of those things that like I just look at it and I don't want to read it, and like, to be honest, I'm just never going to, so why is it taking up space on my overflowing shelves? The Survivors Club by Lisa Gardner, which I may have unhauled in a previous video, and then just like it got lost in my shelves in my move and I never unhauled it, but like I'm gonna unhaul it. I couldn't remember if I had or not, so it's going on here anyway. This was a fine thriller. I can't remember if I gave it 2 or 3 stars. I tend to read Lisa Gardner books, enjoy them, unhaul them, because I'm never going to think about them again, which is fine. Like, I read basically all of her books. Like, I enjoy reading them. They're just very much like one-time reads for me. I might pass this along to my best friend because she also reads Lisa Gardner. We both like her writing style a lot. She has a really like easy writing style that's just like so absorbing, which is kind of why I go for her books all the time. So I might be passing this along to her. Lisa Jackson, The Morning After. This is the sequel to The Night Before, which I did not own. I had to check that out from the library so that I could read this book, which I picked up, which kind of was not necessary in hindsight, but I liked The Night Before a lot. I mean, like, I gave it 2 stars, but I liked it a lot because it was just so much. That book was so much. And this book was not enough, really. This is a romantic suspense about a journalist and a hot cop, and there's a guy called the grave robber, who buries people alive on top of a corpse. So that's exciting. And yeah, they're just kind of investigating that, and also there's almost a romance, but not really. This book is very, very light on the romantic part of romantic suspense. This book was just kind of nothing. Like, it was kind of boring. It was very generic. Like, the actual like crime was like very unique. Like, he was burying people alive on top of a corpse. Like, he put them in a coffin with a corpse and buried them, and like, weird. But like, overall, the rest of the book was just like so bland, and just like, I have nothing to say about it. And I don't love her writing style. Understatement. So the characters were kind of nothing too. All of it was just like, I don't know, nothing. So it's going away. I have more of her books on my shelves, which I do plan on reading them, because like, her books are a fun time. They're just like not something I need to need to be spending much time on or need to be wasting shelf space on. In the Name of Satan, a true story of human sacrifice, devil worship, and murder by Wensley Clarkson. This I got ages and ages ago. I don't remember getting it. I don't remember reading it, but it's not on my to be read book spreadsheet, because I checked, because I was like removing all these books that I hadn't read yet. And it wasn't on there, but I don't remember reading it, so like I don't know if I did or not. But yeah, like, look at this. This is not something I'm going to read. Like, it's very, like, prurient, exploitative true crime, which I'm not into. Like, I like true crime. I find it very interesting. But currently, the true crime I go for is either stuff that's been written by the victims or that's been written by, like, respected journalists. I don't really want, like, this. Spleenwort, stop stepping on Mimi's head. God. What is wrong with you? But, like, I don't go for stuff like this. This just makes me uncomfortable. Like, it's gross. Like, it gives me gross vibes. Yeah, so it's going away. Like, I don't judge people who do read this, but it is just, like, it feels gross and exploitative and, like, very, very prurient true crime. And I would rather just read something, like, serious. It's more of a discussion on crime than just like, look at this devil worship and rape stuff. Let's be as graphic as I can without getting sued. And like, yeah, this needs to go off my shelves. 2 books I haven't read by the same author, Crown of Crystal Flame and Queen of Song and Souls by C.L. Wilson. So in my last Goodreads order, they sent me 2 random books. Like, they sent all the books that I ordered. Like, it was the correct order. There were just, like, 2 random books in it. And it's like, what do I do with these? I'm not going to read these. These are fantasy romance novels. Like, clearly. Like, that is clearly fantasy romance, which I don't really read. And I would have kept it just for, like, the experience of, like, oh, this is something that's so clearly out of my comfort zone. But, they're, like, books 4 and 5 in a series, so, like, we'll just pass them along, and perhaps someone will pick them up from a little free library and enjoy them. Had they been, like, standalones or, like, a first in a series, I probably would have read one. I've never heard of them. I know nothing about them. They came in, they go out. I am not even including them in the book haul, because, like, there's no point in hauling them. They're gonna go away. Yeah, nothing against that author. Like, I would have tried them if they weren't, like, books 4 and 5, but I'm not getting involved in that. Spleen, please calm down. Please just take a chill pill for 10 minutes so I can get through this video. Thank you. I have A Dangerous Fortune by Ken Follett. I gave this 3 stars. It was fine. Ken Follett has an interesting way of writing women in sex scenes, and I do mean interesting is really an insult here. This book was also, like, I don't want to say shallow, like, kind of shallow, kind of petty, kind of, like, surface level drama. It was interesting. Like, the writing style flowed really well, and I loved the pacing, and that was really well done, which was kind of, like, what made me like this book a lot, what makes me, like, eager to try more of his stuff. But, like, the characters were very, like, there were good people and there were bad people, and the good people were very nice and virtuous and deserved everything, and the bad people were petty and mean and stupid and constantly conspiring against the good people. And it was just like, this is not really the way the world works, and, like, that's not really the kind of books that I enjoy. I like when books feel real and characters feel real, and this felt very not real. But again, I like the writing style, so, like, I'll read more of Ken Follett, but, like, this doesn't really need to stay on my shelf, if I'm being honest. I kind of expected more from him. The way, like, he's talked about or, like, held up, I kind of expected him to be, like, a very worthwhile read, and this was kind of, like, almost a poorly written romance novel if there'd been, like, slightly more focus on the romance, and I feel like it would have been a better book if it had been a romance novel. Like, if they just focused on the romance instead of, like, the serious drama aspects, it would have been better, because the romance was like clearly more important. But yeah, I don't know. I'm unhauling it. I don't need it. Candy by Kevin Brooks. This was YA contemporary about a boy who meets a teenage sex worker and falls in love, and lots of negative feelings on this one. This whole book was basically the save a sex worker trope, which is very cringe, and it was also very racist, which was uncomfortable and unpleasant to read. I don't hate his writing style. I have a couple more of his books. I will be reading them. It's just like, this was worse than I expected. It was very just like not well thought out at all. Yeah, essentially like he meets this mysterious manic pixie dream girl and is like, wow, she's so gorgeous, immediately in love, and she's a sex worker who's addicted to heroin maybe or something, I don't know, and she has like a very evil pimp who's like forcing her to stay in business and like trying to like murder the boy and his sister, and like it was a lot. It had a lot of like stuff that was like, she talked about how she was like very beautiful as a teenager, like she sort of like once she went through puberty she was like genuinely like a beautiful person, like above average beautiful, and like she talked about how that like affected her life in like a negative way, and then like literally the whole plot was just that this boy saw her and fell in love with her, and like no criticism of that. It was not good. Yeah, wouldn't recommend. Basically we'll never think about that one again. Not having a good time with the filming today. My camera does not want to stay recording. I don't know why. It has space. We're going with it, because I've committed to this video at this point, and we gotta get this done. Life's Dominion, an argument about abortion, euthanasia, and individual freedom by Ronald Dworkin. This is a legal argument about abortion. There's a bit on euthanasia thrown in. I give this 2 stars. Not great. Very repetitive, very like dry, ableist points. Trying to think what else. Basically, this book was an argument in favor of abortion that was largely focused on, or his belief, that people who are against abortion don't actually believe that fetuses are humans. Rather, it's more about protecting the sanctity of human life, and the book kind of just went from there. There were like interesting parts in it. Like if this was like a 40-page essay, I probably would have been very down for this and enjoyed it a lot, because there were like worthwhile points that he made in this book, but a lot of it was just like incredibly repetitive, and he went off on a lot of weird tangents that like didn't matter and didn't really like contribute to his argument at all, and I wouldn't recommend. It's also old. This book is like 30 years old, I think, so like read something current on abortion. I just had this on my shelf forever and wanted to. When Roe v. Wade got overturned, I was like, I should probably read this before it's just entirely out of date. So I did, and yeah, I don't entirely regret reading it, because like it did have a couple of worthwhile things, just like not one I would recommend overall. Another one that I haven't read, The Bishop's Daughter by Wanda E. Brunstetter. I ordered some books from Good Fair a while ago. Good Fair is essentially a used clothing website. I think their goal is essentially to combat fast fashion, and they offer a lot of like, oh, like you can buy like a pack of 6 t-shirts that are like used thrifted t-shirts, and they'll send you like 6 random ones within like whatever requirements they like sold them as, you know, like within your size and etc. Or like sweatshirts, like a lot of like basics. So really good site. I'll link it down below if you're interested. But at one point they had an option where you could buy books from them. I don't think they do that anymore, but like you're welcome to go look and see. I just did it the one time. Basically they send you a pack of 3 books, like used books, and literally no restrictions on them. They are just sending you 3 books, and you take that as what you will, and you get what you get. That's basically like it. And I was like, that's actually really cool. So I ordered the 3 books, and 2 of them were really interesting, and I was like down. Like not books I would have picked up for myself, but like interesting books. And then there was this one, and I kept it for a long time because I was like, should I read it? Will I read it? This is a Christian fiction romance novel about the Amish, and that's not my thing. I have no interest in that. And it's also, I probably would have read it anyway, but it's also the third in a series. I don't know that the series actually matters, like if they're like a real series or more just like companion books that have some overlapping characters. I was going to look into that to see if I could just read this as a standalone, and then like it just sat there and I was like, I don't want to read this. Like, I don't mind reading books about religion, because religion is a very interesting topic in like both fiction and nonfiction. But like, there's a difference between a book about a religion and a book that is like faith-based, and this is definitely like the latter. And I just have no interest in this topic. I have no interest in a romance novel about the Amish. I don't care. So yeah, maybe someone will find it in a little free library and like it, because I'm gonna pass. Two books by the same author. The first one is Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. I read this a little while ago and I gave it 1 star because, oh my gosh, this was so bad. Like, one of the worst books I've read of the year, like by far, like not a contest. It's basically this and Scruples up for the worst book I've read this year, and they're both like the worst book I've read in years. They're both so bad. I genuinely don't know which was worse, but this is a science fiction novel. It's like classic-ish, I think. I don't know. It deals with like virtual reality, and there's like a virus that's being passed to computer programmers, because essentially the premise is that they can read binary code, so viruses can be like implanted into their brains, which is sure. But there's just a lot to this that was just like so boring and so like gross. And like there was this really gross sex scene between a child and an adult that was just like the most written by a man scene I have ever read, and also like rapey as anything. And like that wasn't the only problem. There was also like one point where they were just explaining the entire book, like everything that had happened in the book for like, I forget how many pages. It was a lot, and it was just pure dialogue for like 10 straight pages of just like him explaining the book and everything that had just happened. Like pages and pages and pages of just him explaining. And I was like, I should have DNF'd this. Like I got to that point and I was like, I'm 80 pages from the end, but I regret not DNFing it. And I regret not DNFing it at that point because it was bad. I don't understand what anyone would see in this. It was so bad. Like, okay, the tech stuff could potentially be cool, but it's like having some cool tech ideas about like virtual realities and stuff like that, because it was like interestingly done. Like he clearly put a lot of time and thought into like creating the virtual reality world and seeing how it would work, but like that doesn't make a good book. It was still a really, really terrible book. And I didn't even care about that part. I cared about the story and the characters, of which there was nothing. No one had any decent motivations. Like, oh, it was so bad. Which brings me to the second book I'm unhauling, which I haven't read. Is like the longest thing I own. Well, no, I own Les Mis. Is this longer than Les Mis? I don't know. It's close. It's like the same length as Les Mis. Fall, or Dodge in Hell by Neal Stephenson. I don't know what this is about. I think this is also like a virtual reality thing. There's a billionaire who founded a gaming company and he died. I don't know. I don't care. I just, like, the amount that I hated Snow Crash. I normally don't just read an author and then unhaul all the other books I own by them, but Snow Crash was so hard to get through, and it was less than 500 pages. It was like 450 pages. This is like 850. Like, this is a thick monster of a book. I had so much trouble getting through Snow Crash. I'm not attempting this. Like, there is no point. I don't want to read this. I don't want anything to do with Neal Stephenson. Like, Snow Crash was gross. So, wouldn't recommend Snow Crash. Don't know what this book is like, but I will not be reading it. So it's going away, and it clears up a lot of space on my shelf because this was a monster of a book. But yeah, I'm kind of mad that I bought it before reading Neal Stephenson because I thought I was gonna like him, and then like, even if I didn't like him, I didn't expect to hate him so much. It's like a really, really bad book. Yeah, it was terrible. I don't understand why he's regarded in the way that he is. But it's fine. It's fine. 2 more and then we get into the final series, which is good because this video is getting long. Lucky by Alice Sebold. This is her memoir. She was raped as a teenager, and then this is basically just about that. It recently came out, I think last year maybe, through DNA testing, maybe more investigation. The man who was convicted of her rape was exonerated. He didn't do it. He had nothing to do with it. He was just a random black guy who she happened to like pick out, and like she thought he was her rapist. And most of this book is about like the trial and like her tracking down her rapist and like all of that. Well, not most of the book, but like a lot of the book is about that. And it's just like, this really needs to be rewritten if it's gonna stay in publication. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was kind of like you know, like it's not like the greatest memoir of rape I've ever read, or even like memoir in general. It was fine, but like, yeah, it definitely needs to be rewritten if it's gonna stay in publication. And like, I don't really blame her so much. Like, she was a traumatized 18-year-old. And I think mostly like the cops are to blame. Like, definitely racist, and it was definitely racist of her, but like cross-racial witness identification is like notoriously terrible, and the cops did a terrible investigation, again, because racism. But I think it reminds me a little bit of I Am the Central Park Jogger, which I read years ago, where essentially she wrote the book almost as though the Central Park Five were guilty, and it kind of felt like a lawyer went through that book and just like tweaked things so she wouldn't be sued, because she was technically like, yeah, they were innocent, like they didn't do it, but it was almost written like they were. And this has similar vibes for me now. So I think if it is to stay in publication or stay out, which I doubt it is at this point, it just needs like a full complete rewrite, or just like a new book in that case. But yeah, I didn't love it anyway, and it just like doesn't need to be taking up space on my shelf. And then I have the final book, well, not the last one, but like the last one that matters. Women in Sunlight by Frances Mays. I DNF'd this in August. I just could not, or August, maybe July. Over the summer I DNF'd this. I couldn't get through it. This is about 3 older women in their 60s tour a retirement home together, and then they're like, we're not quite ready for that stage in our life, so they move to Italy. And while they're in Italy, they meet an author who's been living there for years, who's like 40, and they kind of strike up a friendship, and it's just like about them living in Italy. And I hated this so much. I think I got like, at a point I realized I had like 120 pages to go to get to the halfway point of the book, and I was like, I cannot do this, like I can't. I tried so hard. I just like, it was so miserable. And like, it's not like it's the worst thing I've ever read, it's just like I hated all the characters, and it was like weirdly difficult to follow what was going on, like not like in the greater scheme of things, but the actual like the physicalities of the book, like what was happening in that moment, like who was in the scene, like what was happening, who was saying what. Like, there was a dog, and I literally couldn't figure out which of the women the dog belonged to, because like it just like wasn't written very clearly, and it was so annoying. And then I got to a point where the 40-year-old woman was like pregnant or something, and they were just going off, and like her significant other was like, oh, like I remember the night that it must have happened. That was such a special night. Like, we've made love on other nights, but nothing as special as that night. And I was like, that's not how pregnancy works. And also not how people talk. The dialogue was terrible. But yeah, this was unpleasant. So yeah, not into this one. I'm glad to see it go. I don't DNF books often, especially like physical books that I own, and like I was more than 100 pages in. I could not make myself do it. And then the last thing I have to talk about briefly is all of the Robert Galbraith books, which I have the first 4, and I have the third one twice. Yeah, I never read them. I stopped reading J.K. Rowling years ago. I'm not gonna hold these up. I'll hold up like one. There we go. stopped reading J.K. Rowling years ago when she just started going like hardcore in on the transphobia, and I never unhauled them because I think part of me was like, she has to wake up at some point, right? And like realize how far off the deep end she's gone. Like, how does she not notice this? And I don't know. I kept like hoping that would happen. Like, I don't know. And it's clearly never going to happen. And I never read these, and like they're apparently just getting worse based on the way people are talking about the most recent one, which I don't know what it's called. But I stopped reading her a long time ago, and like these books take up so much space on my shelves, and I don't know why I still have them, because like we do not support transphobes here, we support trans people, so they're going away. I was clearly never gonna read these. I started the first one because I was buddy reading it with someone, and we didn't get very far in. I think we got like less than 50 pages in, and we didn't DNF it because it was bad. We just DNF'd it because like neither of us were like in the headspace to be buddy reading something, and we both needed like a break. We were gonna come back to it, never did, and like, yeah, they're going away. So I've needed to get rid of those for ages. I should have done it by now, but you know, better late than never. They're going away now. So this clears up, well, I was gonna say this clears up a lot of space on my shelves, but it doesn't, because I put all my Unhaul books over on like a miniature shelf that I keep all my like books that I need to keep separate, like anything for TBRs or like currently reading or haul books or whatever. So it clears up space on that shelf, but not like these. But that was everything I'm getting rid of. Let me know down below if you have thoughts on these. Okay, let me know if you've read any of the ones that I am unhauling without reading, and if they're like really amazing and I'm making a huge mistake, because I am not totally against putting them back on my TBR, but I probably won't. But let me know. Talk to me in the comments. I always like that. It makes me happy. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.